There is an invisible force in man that dominates himself. It is not about shouting truths or demanding respect. The Stoic does not need to convince. His posture speaks for him. When man stops asking, explaining himself, and simply keeps silent, he allows the world to hear the echo of his own presence, and this echo is often stronger than any speech. The woman may be frightened by this silence, not because it represents coldness, but because it reveals control. Before she heard justifications, promises, statements. Now she faces the reflection of her own attitudes. There are no more arguments, no more emotional disputes. There is only presence. And this presence without dependence is more frightening than any absence. A man who knows himself understands that he does not need to be understood. He knows that peace is not in explanation, but in acceptance. Accept that not everyone will understand your journey, that not all relationships need to continue. Silence, in this case, is not empty. It is filled with purpose, firmness, self-awareness. While many associate silence with weakness or submission, the Stoic sees it as a strategy. He speaks only when it is useful, when it is necessary, and especially when your word is not just a reaction, but a reflection. He doesn't respond on impulse, he responds with intention. The silence of the Stoic is a conscious choice. He prefers to observe, absorb, and act wisely, rather than get lost in emotional confrontations that lead nowhere. The woman who was used to uncontrolled emotion is now faced with serene firmness. And in this firmness, she understands that she has lost something that she may never have really possessed: the dominion over him. In the end, it is not the absence of words that weighs heavily. That's what silence carries. It carries the message that man has grown up, that he is no longer seeking approval, but balance, that he chose to own himself. And that changes everything. She doesn't cry because you screamed, nor does she grieve because you left. The real pain begins when she realizes that you've changed, and that change no longer revolves around her. What hurts is not physical distance, but emotional independence. The man who was predictable, who gave in, who sought approval, is now firm. And she feels it. The Stoic does not deny his emotions, but governs them. He can love, yes, you can feel it, you can get involved, but he will never be a slave to these feelings, and above all, he will not give up his personal power in exchange for crumbs of affection. When the woman realizes this, the game changes. She's no longer dealing with a needy man, but with a centered man. The quietest change is the most devastating. Before, she controlled his mood, attitudes, decisions. Now she realizes that her reactions no longer influence what he does. He doesn't beg, he doesn't justify, he doesn't try to prove his worth. He just goes on, calmly, with purpose, with dignity. The power she thought she had was just a reflection of her emotional dependence on him. The Stoic breaks this dependence, and with that, it destroys the illusion. The woman may even try to provoke him, test limits, demand answers. But the firm man, who recognizes himself, no longer enters into this game. He doesn't run away, he doesn't participate. The absence of submission is what really causes pain, not because man has become cruel, but because he has stopped being manipulable. And every relationship based on emotional control falls apart when the other party is no longer controlled. The Stoic shows that love is not a prison. It's choice, and he chose himself. This choice for her hurts more than any farewell, because he is not the one who left her life. She is the one who lost the place of command in his life. In a world where everything encourages man to explode, to react, to prove something to someone, the Stoic chooses the most difficult path: imperturbability. He's not cold, he's centered. And this difference changes everything. The strength he carries is not in clenched fists, but in calm mind. He's not altered by provocations or rejections. A woman can test limits, provoke, measure their importance. But the Stoic man does not react with despair. He observes, he understands, and then he chooses how and when to act, if necessary. This calm is often confused with disinterest, but in fact, it is wisdom, it is domination. Reacting is easy. Anyone reacts. But remaining unshaken requires inner training. It requires self-awareness, impulse control, understanding of one's own nature. When a man dominates himself, no one else dominates him. And that's what makes it admirable. It is not the power of the voice, it is the power of presence. The world can collapse all around, words can hurt, looks can accuse, but he remains firm. It does not turn off to please, nor does it light up to impose itself. He is. And in this being, he inspires respect. Because those who are whole on the inside don't need to prove anything on the outside. For the woman who was used to manipulating emotions, this is disconcerting. She no longer finds weaknesses. Not because he hides them, but because he accepted them and strengthened them. The Stoic man no longer depends on the validation of others. He lives according to his values, not according to the expectations of others. This quiet force is what really attracts. Because deep down every woman admires the one who doesn't need her to be happy, but who even so chooses to be. And this choice, made without haste, without attachment, with awareness, is what differentiates the strong from the desperate. The basis of Stoicism is simple. Happiness comes from within. A man who has understood this does not look for completeness in another person. He does not surrender his emotional axis into the hands of someone who can leave at any moment. It is whole, and when he lives like this, respect comes naturally. The woman may even feel confused at first. Where there was once anxiety, there is now balance. Where there was a need, there is now choice. She is no longer the center of his universe, and precisely for this reason, she starts to look at him with different eyes, because she realizes he is there by will, not by dependence. The man who no longer needs love to validate himself starts to truly love, because your love doesn't come from the fear of loneliness, but from inner abundance. He gives because he has it. He shares because he overflows. And this is rare, that's powerful. She notices that he no longer fears abandonment because he learned to be with himself. It doesn't control him, doesn't threaten him, doesn't tie him down. And yet he remains calm, decisive, present. And this makes her question, how can someone be so whole without me? The answer, he found himself. This emotional independence does not drive away, it attracts. Because it shows maturity. It shows that man has a life, a purpose, a mission that goes beyond pleasing someone. And this type of man is not common. He doesn't let himself be consumed by the novel. He positions himself inside it. Respect is born there. The very moment she understands that you are no longer trying to be enough for her, you are already enough for yourself, and anyone who comes into your life now will be part of your path, not their reason. Changes are scary, especially when change breaks patterns of power. The woman who once dominated with silence, with withdrawal or with contempt, now meets resistance. Not aggressive resistance, but stoic firmness. And that's what really destabilizes it. She doesn't walk away because you've become someone worse. On the contrary, she walks away because she can no longer predict her steps. Before, she knew that her disappearance would be short-lived, that a fight would end in an apology, that a rejection would make you run after it. Not anymore. The Stoic does not react with despair. He understands that control over others is illusion, and that the only thing you can really master is yourself. So when she tries to tease, he doesn't respond. When she walks away, he doesn't run. He observes, and if necessary, follow. This type of posture dismantles any emotional game because she realizes that she is no longer dealing with a predictable man. He is in front of someone who, even though he feels, does not bend. Even though he likes it, he does not give in to chaos. This is not coldness, it is clarity. The control she thought she had disappears, not because he fought over it, but because he just stopped giving in. And an uncontrolled relationship becomes, for those in charge, an uncertain terrain. She no longer knows how to act, because now he's an enigma. And this conundrum is not a trick. It is the reflection of a man who has found himself again, that is no longer available in exchange for crumbs, that no longer negotiates its value, and that, above all, prefers to be respected than to be desired. True power is not in controlling what happens outside, but in commanding what happens inside. The man who learns to master himself is not the one who never feels anger, jealousy, or fear. He is the one who feels all of these, but does not become a slave to those emotions. He feels and chooses how to act. And this choice, constant and conscious, is what makes it powerful. In Stoicism, freedom begins in the mind. A free man is not one who does everything he wants, but one who does not allow himself to be carried away by impulses. He observes his own thoughts before becoming hostage to them. He is like a general on the battlefield. He does not run with the soldiers, he commands with vision. Faced with a conflict, the common man reacts. He screams, accuses, despairs. The Stoic man, on the other hand, analyzes. He does not act to win the argument, but to preserve his peace. Sometimes that means keeping quiet. Others, it means moving away, but it never means losing control. The woman notices this change. Before, a gesture was enough to destabilize him. Now she is faced with someone who listens to her without bending over, who loves her without annulling himself, who is present without being imprisoned. He doesn't need to impose anything. His stance imposes by itself. This inner mastery transforms everything around it, because when a man rules his mind, no woman, no matter how fascinating, can manipulate his emotions. It may try to provoke reactions, but it will not be able to break through the inner wall built by itself, the wall of consciousness. This is the man who inspires respect, not by physical strength, but by emotional discipline. He doesn't fight for attention. He does not beg for affection. He knows that whoever recognizes him accompanies him. And those who don't recognize it just reveal that they don't deserve to be by your side. Many confuse love with attachment, but attachment is an emotional prison disguised as affection. It makes man believe that he cannot live without someone, that he needs the constant presence of the other person to feel whole. And when that bond is broken, the pain doesn't come from the absence of the woman, it comes from the absence of oneself. The Stoic understands that true love can only exist between two free beings, and that means that the other can go, and even then he will continue to be fine. This is not coldness, it is maturity. Attachment causes man to annul himself to keep someone close. Real love, on the contrary, requires courage to maintain oneself. The woman feels the difference. The attached man despairs at any threat of loss. He molds himself, adapts, humbles himself. The conscious man, on the other hand, loves without getting lost. It offers presence, but maintains its identity. He surrenders, but without dissolving. Emotional dependence is confused with romanticism, but there is nothing romantic about forgetting who you are to please. True connection happens when two individuals relate without giving up their essence. When you're not afraid of losing, you love much more purely, because there's no bargain, only truth. She can even move away, test, impose distance, but the man who does not live in attachment does not panic. He feels, breathes, and follows. This is surprising because she was used to reactions. Now he finds calm. And this calmness is one of the deepest forms of strength. Attachment is noise. Conscious presence is silence, and it is in this silence that true value is revealed. Because the man who doesn't need but chooses is the one who impacts the most. He is not there out of necessity. He is there for integrity. In the life of an awakened man, there is no room for emotional pleading. He does not drag himself out of love. He does not shrink out of desire. When something no longer makes sense, he doesn't despair. He analyzes, accepts, and continues. The Stoic is not trying to please. He is living with purpose. The world teaches man how to conquer. But the Stoic understands that not everything that is achieved deserves to be maintained. He doesn't force relationships. He doesn't pressure anyone to stay. He offers his best, and if that's not enough, he accepts it with honor and goes on with dignity. To beg is to put yourself down. It is to say, with gestures or words, that one's presence has no value if the other does not approve of it. This is contrary to everything that a firm man represents. The Stoic does not seek love out of need. He lives so well in his own company that he only connects with what he adds. The woman who is used to having the man at her feet is frightened when she meets someone who does not bend down. Someone who, in the face of disinterest, just thanks and walks away. This is not pride. It is emotional wisdom. He does not hold where there is no reciprocity. This posture is powerful because it shows that he chooses himself, always, not out of ego, but out of understanding. He knows that any relationship based on emotional imbalance is doomed to collapse. And that's why she is not afraid to be alone, because he is never alone. He is with himself. Those who do not beg impose their presence. Those who choose firmly are remembered with respect, because at the end of the day, no one values what is pleaded. What is offered with strength and maintained with conscience is valued. The pain that many women feel does not come from the physical absence of the man. It comes from the fact that they can no longer influence their decisions. Before, he molded himself to her wishes, justified himself, blamed himself. Now he is calm, he is whole, and that emotional solidity is what really hurts her ego. The Stoic no longer plays the game of control. He lives for himself, with conscience, with righteousness. He can even listen, consider, ponder. But the final decision is his, not out of arrogance, but out of maturity. He stopped outsourcing his thinking, and now he only acts according to his principles. This change is subtle but devastating. Before, she felt that she could change her opinion with a gesture, a look, a silence. Today, she realizes that her artifices have lost strength. He is no longer vulnerable to emotional manipulation. And now, it has become an enigma that she can no longer decipher. The man who regains emotional autonomy has a profound impact. It's not revenge, it's evolution. He doesn't want to cause pain. But when he stops giving in, he automatically dismantles any dynamics of dependence or domination. She can try to provoke, test, even accuse. But he doesn't react, he replies. And many times it does not even respond. He just observes and follows. This absence of drama is its greatest defense. He does not expose himself, he does not despair, he does not go back. And this breaks the control she previously thought she had. Basically, abandonment was never the problem. The problem was the end of influence. The end of the certainty that he would be there, no matter how he was treated. Now he has become free, and emotional freedom is what most unbalances those who have always counted on their dependence. When the world expects you to scream and you shut up, you break the script. The woman who is used to seeing the man reacting to her every move becomes destabilized in front of the one who only observes. Absence of reaction is the most elegant form of self-mastery. The Stoic understands that not everything deserves an answer. Some situations just deserve distance. Some provocations only deserve silence. He's not running away. He's protecting your peace. And that's not weakness, that's strength, because not reacting requires more power than reacting. She tests. She plays indirects. It creates climates, but he remains serene because its value is not in winning the argument. It's in not allowing it to drag you into the same emotional battleground. He doesn't need to defend himself. His stance already speaks for him. The absence of reaction is an answer, and one of the most powerful. It shows that he is no longer affected by what used to crumble him, that he no longer feels the need to prove, to explain, to beg. He simply lives, and this, for those who have lost control over it, is unbearable. The woman realizes that he is not there out of need, that he's not trying to win her back, that he doesn't want to prove value because he has already recognized it. He is now a man with focus, with mission, with clarity. And this type of man does not allow himself to be manipulated by emotional games. The real power lies in not being shaken, in not letting the external dictate the internal. And the man who reaches this level of consciousness is not only admired, he is respected. Because he proved, with his calmness, that no one else directs his soul. You don't have to explain that you have become stoic. Needless to say, he now prioritizes his peace, his mind, and his dignity. She feels it. Before she even understands her new choices, she realizes that something has changed, and this worries her. What was once predictable is now firm. What was once a reaction became a consideration. The woman who knew her old version begins to wonder about the silence where there was despair. She doesn't know exactly what happened, but she realizes that her words no longer shake you like they used to, that your tests don't work anymore. And most of all, that you're no longer trying to fit into her mold. This estrangement for many is the beginning of the end. But for the awakened man, it is the sign that a new cycle has begun, a cycle of authenticity. Now you act not to please, but to live meaningfully. It does not seek approval, it seeks consistency with its own values. She can question, accuse, or even walk away, but at some point she'll realize you're not playing anymore. You're following, and not with anger, with awareness. You have not become insensitive, you have just learned not to abandon yourself for anyone. It is at this point that she begins to feel threatened, because he realizes that he has lost control. Not control of the relationship, but control over the impact it had on you. And that, for those who have always had emotional power, is disturbing. She feels, before she understands, that you now live under a new philosophy. A philosophy that does not seek to be right, but to live in peace. Who does not run after those who leave, but walks with those who want to stay. And that, above all, no longer negotiates its principles to maintain its presence. Emotional freedom comes at a price. Judgment. When you stop reacting, giving in, explaining yourself at all costs, many will say that you are cold, distant, insensitive. But the truth is different. You have not become cold. You just freed yourself from the role you were expected to play. Before, you were stuck in the need to please, trapped in the fear of loss, in the dread of being rejected. Not anymore. You have understood that no love is worth your inner loss, and when he abandoned necessity, he found freedom. A freedom that bothers those who still depend on their old self. She feels like you're no longer trying to be the hero, the savior, the desperate romantic. And this, for those who have become accustomed to his emotional submission, seems cold. But what she sees as coldness, in fact, is clarity. It's you putting yourself as a priority without guilt. The Stoic does not hate, does not take revenge, does not distance himself out of pride. He only recognizes what is healthy and what is not. and he acts accordingly. He does not live to prove that he feels. He lives not to betray himself. This is not an absence of emotion, it is dominion over it. The freedom you have earned does not mean indifference. It means that now you love without losing yourself, that you are present without submitting, that you feel, but that is no longer broken inside. And this is rare. That's powerful. Don't worry about those who mistake your peace for coldness. Those who truly see you will realize that instead of moving away from love, you have finally started to love the most important person in your life, yourself. Time is the most valuable asset you have, and for a long time, you gave it away unconsciously. He cancelled appointments, postponed dreams, silenced desires, all in the name of pleasing. But the man who awakens to stoicism understands. Those who do not respect their own time will never be respected by others. The woman realized this. She saw that all it took was a gesture, a message, and you dropped everything to run to her. This is not proof of love. It is a sign of internal disorder, because those who live for the other forget themselves, and no one admires the man who forgets himself. Now you act differently. You organize your days, your schedules, your priorities. Does she text? You respond when you can. Does it call? You evaluate if it's the right time, not out of coldness, but out of self-respect. Because those who respect themselves are not urgent, it is present with awareness. This can generate strangeness. She may think you're distant, uninterested, but over time you'll understand that what you're doing is setting a new standard, the standard of the man who honors his time and expects the same in return. This attitude doesn't just transform your relationship with it, it transforms your life. Because when you value your time, you automatically filter out who deserves to be a part of it, and those who do not understand this end up moving away naturally. Respect is born like this, not when you demand it, but when you show that you respect yourself enough not to be disorganized by any emotional stimulus. And this posture, member of Living from YouTube, is what differentiates the common man from the awakened man. For years you believed that you needed to do more, say more, give more to be valued. But the more he tasted, the less he was recognized. The truth is that value is not shouted out, it is lived. The Stoic man understood this. He stopped tasting, and it began to be. She noticed his urgency, your fear of not being enough. You demonstrated, donated, explained yourself, begged, but this does not generate respect. It generates pity, discomfort, even contempt. Because all excess is perceived as lack, and every lack drives away. Now you get the idea. You don't need to prove anything. Its value is in your presence, in your balance, in his silence. In his firm gaze that does not seek validation, he only shows truth. When you stop trying to be noticed, you finally start to get noticed. She feels this change, and you can try to test it again, but you no longer react as before, because now you know who you are. And whoever knows who you are doesn't go to war to be accepted. He walks with firm steps, and whoever wants to follow does so by choice, not by manipulation. A man's worth lies in his certainty, not in his performance. And this certainty is not shouted from the four winds. It is silent, almost invisible, but when you live by it, the whole environment around you changes. To stop tasting is an act of power, because it is at that moment that you withdraw from the court of other people's opinion and establish yourself on the throne of your own conscience. From there, you don't have to be chosen. You chose yourself. At first, she felt like the sun of her life. Everything revolved around her, her decisions, her schedules, her emotions. But this emotional dependence was not love, it was imbalance. The Stoic realizes this, and it changes the rotation of your world. Now, the orbit is internal. She feels the difference. Where there was despair before, there is now focus. Where there was urgency, there is now presence. You no longer conform to her wishes. He no longer lives to please her. It lives to fulfill its mission, its values, its journey. And ironically, that makes you more attractive. The man who fails to put his wife at the center of everything shows that he has found a new center, himself. This does not mean ignoring or devaluing it. It means that you love her without idolatry, without submission, without fear. It means that it is part, not purpose. This change can be scary because she felt power in her dependence. Now that power dissolves. She doesn't know how to move you anymore because you have become firm as a rock. And the only way to be with you now is with respect, not with emotional mastery. This new structure of life is not only emotional, it is spiritual. Because a man who centers his existence on something external is always vulnerable. But he who anchors himself in himself is unshakable. He connects with others, yes, but without giving up his own essence. And this connection, free of necessity, is the most powerful there is. Because when you no longer need to be chosen, you become what is chosen. The woman feels it. And it understands, even if belatedly, that it has lost the place it occupied by control, and that now it can only remain by mutual choice.